Okay, I think we're ready to start. So my name is Joe Dalton. I'm the Secretary of the Intermittent Water Supply Specialist Group. Good afternoon or good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining for this, our next webinar on intermittent water supply. So today I'm very happy to introduce our speaker, Anand Jalakam. He is a water professional, has his own consultancy company based in Bangalore called Jalakam Solutions. So I'm very interested to hear about the projects, the performance-based contract type projects that Anand's going to speak about from India. So Anand, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Dalton. Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. And first, let me thank IWA Intermittent Specialist Group, Razia and Dalton, for giving me this opportunity to share my little experience in designing the PBC contracts. And of late, India had been trying out to outsource substantial part of water supply operations, and both in production as well as in distribution to private sector. And there, in the past 10 years, there had been several contracts happen. So I thought we could share some of those experiences, what the limitations we faced, and what's the lessons we learned. So with that later introduction, okay, I'm a water utility professional, and I worked in the public utilities followed by private sector. And over 40 years, I've been working in water sector, both in India and overseas. And I physically operated myself one of the water utility. And with that experience, we run this consulting company. Let me switch off my video. Yeah. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So I already thanked Razia and Joe Dalton and IWA. And I also sincerely acknowledge all the lessons experience I gained from several utilities working in both in India and overseas. And we work extensively with the multilateral development banks, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, KFW, and JICA also. And so I'm going to take you through a little bit of introduction about India water supply, the scenario of intermittent water supply in India. I'll just briefly touch upon the water utility key function. And again, coming back to India, what's the insourcing and outsourcing institutional model currently prevalent in the country? I'll just briefly touch upon. Then we get into the PBC contract case studies. And there are about 5 case studies I would present. And I'll also summarize how do we learn the lessons from all these, and how they have been having a limited success in doing this. And I'm sure many of you will know that India is almost now today, as on today, is 1.4 billion people, and they are resident in almost 8,400 towns, and there are 53 million plus cities in India, and then there are about 665,000 villages. So this is a massive, populated country with several towns and villages, and but we are a water stressed country, and currently, as per the international norm, we have already, crossed into less than 1,700 cubic meter per year water availability. We are in the water stress zone, and if it goes below 1,000, and we will become a water scarcity country. We are very, very tightly dependent on our monsoons. And there is a massive demand supply gap, spiraling. At the same time, India is very fast urbanizing. So substantial part of rural India is turning into cities. They are migrating into cities. So it is causing quite a bit of stress on the water resources. And while we struggle for water resources, but again, I would say India is an intermittent water supply country. And even though this graph is an average graph, which shows that we get about 5 hours of water supply a day, but I can tell you, if you cross the middle of the country towards south, south has not known, we don't have Himalayas like North India, where you get at least snow melt rivers. we simply depend on rain, which is hardly 30 days of rain in a year. It happens in southern India. So there are towns with once in a week water supply, and there are towns even with once in 15 days water supply during summer, and majority of towns in southern India gives almost alternate day water supply, but overall average is about 5. And I try to compare with our near neighbors. So there is a huge difference between. And while the intermittent water supply is so prevalent in the country because of the resource issue as well as the management issue of the utilities, that results in massive non-revenue water. And typically in Indian utilities, leakages are so high. There are several reasons for it, and the intermittent water supply practice is originates from water loss, and water loss is never attended, and they simply close the valve and they don't allow the water to leak in the networks. So the rationing becomes much more prevalent, and that rationing further damages the network. And we have very, very badly leaking networks. And it's like an interdependency. The lack of availability it causes rationing, and the rationing causes massive water loss, and water loss again further worsens in the rationing, and we are into the downward spiral. And as I said, except 4 towns, again these 4 towns have been converted to 24/7 in the past 5 years, and there is no other town in India at the moment delivering round the clock water supply. And it's the same case with villages. Villages also give intermittent water, and supply hours, as I said, vary between couple of hours a day to there are many towns with once in 2-3 hours a week supply, and that worsens during summer months. And non-revenue water, honestly, in such erratic water supply, it's very, very difficult to measure non-revenue water, because you are not even charging the networks all through the day. So that's the reason the NRW estimates are quite, I would say, theoretical and empirical. So a guess is about 40 to 70% water is non-revenue water, with physical losses almost to a tune of 50%. And because of this prevalent intermittent water supply, quality of water is badly affected. And that's the reason many people leave the tap for about 2 minutes. Once the water starts coming, they leave the water because it carries all the dirt from the pipes. So that's a practice across the country. And this has also led to a massive investment by customers' own creation of water facilities. So I would say probably if you live in Bangalore, over 90% of the properties have their own boreholes, and they have their own storage both at the ground level and the roof level, and they have their own pumping systems. And also I would put a percentage about 40% of the customers also have a treatment system within their house or the property. And in terms of water service delivery, we have typically, like most of the world, we do have municipalities actually obligated to deliver services, but at the same time, there are different structures in different states. There are state level water boards, and there are the city level water boards. And off late, the institutions started setting up water companies, public water companies. And there's so many different structures exist across the country. We are a massive country with the 26 states. So, and one biggest weakness of India is we don't have what we call local water industry, that with a professionalized water service delivery. We do have construction companies who do all sorts of civil construction, including water supply, asset construction. And we have the local maintenance companies, small time, either labor or just a maintenance company who does the routine maintenance. But we don't have as such a local professionalized operator. And in the last 10 years, the government of India is putting a huge investment of almost to a tune of 90 billion, covering both rural and urban. And they have now come up with a program to convert at least one DMA in about 500 towns across the country with a 24/7. That program is just launched. I'll probably skip this because of the time. So as I said, service delivery models, we have several insourcing, and we have a municipal water department in many cities where the municipality does it's part of the municipal water works department, they call it. And then there are like state boards and state-owned department, which provides in some states entire service. In some states, they just provide the bulk supply of water. And then there are water authorities, autonomous authorities, and water boards set up by the state under a law. So which again, or pan state, or they could be also for a city, like Bangalore has a city water board, Delhi has a city water board, about 6 similar city water boards exist in the country. And as I said earlier, recently, there's a trend to set up water utility companies to basically corporatize these city utilities into a companies to get a little more functional autonomy and decision making, both in financial as well as the service delivery issues. And as I said, the past 10 years, the utilities have been preferring to involve private sector, not only in construction, but in service delivery. So it all started with service contracts for water treatment plants, pumping stations, and then slowly the PBCs, the performance-based contracts, started happening in the country. It again was initially limited to the production assets, water treatment or sewage treatment. Then the distribution started, people started involving private sector into the distribution. And the market is currently is I would say preferring design, build, operate. So they do want to even transfer the entire design risk to the contractors. And there has been BOT tried in a desal plant. And other than that, there is not much of success of BOT. And concessions, about 3 concessions happened in the country, one in a small area in Delhi, and other 2 cities, Nagpur and Coimbatore. And that's a very, very limited. And again, the concession means it's not full investment by private sector. It's a very little partial investment, 20 to 30%. So that's about the scenario happening in India. Now I'll try to present you the PBC contracts. And the first contract, really a path-breaking contract, this was financed by the World Bank, and it happened in the state where I live. And there are 3 cities in which 3 small pilot demonstration zones were selected, of total about 25,000 connection. And then the operator was chosen based on a management fee model. And the operator was not to construct the works. It was only to provide operations and service delivery. So a management fee was to be quoted for which. And then the operator, once appointed, will prepare a capital investment plan and about in 9 months' time. And also the contract has a capital investment threshold that this cannot be more than, say, $5 million. I don't know if it increases 5 million, then the contract goes for a termination. And if the operator can save out of the 5 million threshold, they can also have a what we call capital efficiency bonus to a tune of 20%. And the operator designed the system, studied the existing system, and designed how the system improvements happen. And then operator procured all these, pipeline works and meters and pumps and all that through a competitive bidding, where the operator does the bidding and manages the bidding and selects a contractor, but the award is done by the employer. And payment is also directly done by the employer. The operator wouldn't get the construction payments. So the operator only gets the operational payment. And a 2-year implementation period followed by 5-year O&M period. And in the implementation, it took almost 3 years of implementation due to several delays happening in the discovering the networks. And then this has been a very, very path-breaking successful contract in which, honestly, first time in India, people saw continuous water, pressurized water at tap. And the operations fee, what the operator quoted, it was performance linked. The 60% was fixed and about 40% was linked to different key performance indicators. And also there is a bonus for higher performance. If the losses are brought down further to the target, the operator gets an incentive. And as I said earlier, capital efficiency bonus. If the operator can save capex initial threshold, the 20% of that, and it happened, the operator saved substantial part of capex and achieved a very good capital efficiency in doing that, and achieved 24/7, which is now running since 14 years. And it was a successful model, and in which the performance risk is transferred to the operator and also incentivized for the capital efficiency. But unfortunately, after the completion of the project, everybody appreciated, and people really, there have been 400 teams visited to learn from this experiment. But finally, the market did not prefer, because this requires a full-fledged operator qualification. Unfortunately, India had only 2 MNC operators earlier, and there was no local operator. As I said, there's no local water industry. So the market then moved into developing the construction contractors into water operators. That's how the market transformed, even though this was a very successful experiment. And when this project in 2016, by the time it operated for over 9 to 10 years, and then a comparison was made between the demo zone of the 10% of the city where 24/7 is delivered and the remaining part of the city. So you can see about an average 104 liters was the system input volume into the demo zone was given to the operator, within which it includes operators losses in the system. Then it was maintained 24/7, fully satisfying the customer demand. Whereas in the remaining city, even though the municipality had a 200-liter availability of supply input, but still the supply was once in 3 days, and the latest situation in those towns is almost it's once in 5 days. So even though there's substantial bulk available, but the municipal operations could not deliver it, and the intermittent water supply keeps worsening over a time, whereas the 24/7 is sustaining and continued. And this really impressed the municipal decision maker to continue with the private sector instead of the public utility operations. And as I said, this model could not succeed because lack of operators in the country. So the market moved into a DBO contract regime, design, build, operate, and substantial projects are, at least 70 projects are implemented in the country. I'll just touch upon 2 states. And this basically the contract structure is that a consultant first prepares a detailed project report with an indicative bill of quantities, and then you select a construction company, either with a JV with an operator or the construction company if it had some operations experience. So they are chosen. So predominantly the construction companies participated because these contracts starts with construction, and these are primarily based on FIDIC Gold Book. And there is a sequencing happening. The first is construction, followed by O&M. Typically, construction varied depending on the city size, 3 to 4 years, and about 5 to 15 years is the O&M. There are fixed KPIs in each contract, and in some contracts, full payment is done for the construction, whereas few cities have tried what they call partial payment or deferred payment, which is if the contract is eligible for, let's say, $100 payment for a construction component, but he'll get paid only $80, and the balance $20 will be paid over end of each year of O&M, successful O&M operation. So basically, it's called deferred payment. Later on, it was transformed into what they call HAM model, that is hybrid annuity model. And again, operations fee is fixed and performance linked. Predominantly, it is 70/30. And the construction companies really loved it and participated. And it had been, I would say, reasonably good success in small towns and some are small and medium towns. But in large cities, honestly, people could not see any big difference. And there was definitely improvement of hours of supply and substantial improvement in revenue and customer services. But unfortunately, none of those contracts are currently delivering 24/7, which was the original target. But people are quite happy that they were getting once in 2 days, and currently they are getting probably 3-4 hours a daily water supply. So people are quite happy with the daily water supply in those areas, even though the contracts are not delivering 24/7. But people have seen the customer services, and which really resulted in huge revenue jump. So the municipalities are happy that they are getting much more revenue instead of losing operating costs. So this clearly shows how the service levels over a time improve, also improving the revenue in about 3 projects. So the revenue, it was directly linked that if you improve services, not even about 24/7, but some supply improvement, it really generates a good revenue, and also and some good management of metering and meter reading and stuff. However, because these are typically designed by the consultant but implemented by the contractor, and the contractor would do a service improvement plan on appointment, so there have been substantial variations in quantities and also in terms of the time. So you can see there are some contracts almost 300% time run, and there are contracts with about 2/3 extra time run. So and also the one more reason of this time run is typically the municipal politicians say, no, I want this to be completed in 2 years time, artificially fixed timeline, even though it will require more time. So but the lesson of the story is the consultant doing a simple diagnosis at the start, and then an operator implementing it, there will be good lot of variation both in scope as well as timeline. Then the Bangalore city implemented a water reduction contract, and this was financed by JICA, and they were split Bangalore into 5 zones, and they've issued 5 contracts. And this was a simple works contract based on FIDIC, and where an operator is selected and who will be given a geography of area. The operator would design a DMA system, and the entire design hydraulic modeling will be undertaken. Then the operator also does, and Bangalore, one good thing with Bangalore is 100% metered utility, unlike many other cities in India. So there was a facility for measuring the non-revenue water, set up a baseline, and then the operator does repair works, proposes repair works and executes them. And then operator also maintains the reduced leakage levels. But in this contract, the JICA preferred to call it as unaccounted for water, not the non-revenue water. And the target for the contract was to reduce it to 16%. And the initial baseline level was about 44%. From 44% to 16% was that. And there was a graded penalty if the OW is higher than 16%. And one big difference here is the contractor's responsibility only is for maintenance, do leak repair, leak detection and leak repair, but is not involved in the operations or meter reading or billing and all that, which is still rests with the board. So I would say this is a partial successful contract, and it definitely reduced some unaccounted for water, and the board gained a little more water to divert into other zones, but it really did not result in any improvements at the customer end. Customer doesn't even know, because I still get water 4 hours every second day in Bangalore. So we still continue to get, even after in where my house is there, the area is also given to a private sector company. So the contract is already complete 7-8 years, but we still don't see an extra water, 1 liter of water into our, or extra 1 hour of supply. So the same rationing continues. Then the cities of Delhi implemented a small area in Delhi, about a million connections, if I understand. So a concession model. This is not a full investment, it's a partial investment. It's a 12-year contract where the operator is prepares. Initially, again, a consultant prepared a service improvement plan, which operator does a much more detailed study while operating it, and then proposes a final service improvement plan, implements it, and the construction prices are actually fixed by the employer as part of the bid. So there is no competitive bid for the construction price. The bidder is selected based on operational price and the return of investment, because the operator has to invest 30%, and whatever the capex is done, 70% is paid by the employer, and the balance 30% the operator recovers during the concession period. It's about 15-year concession, and the operator quoted not just a fee. Here they are actually operator quoted for what meter cubed of volume billed and collected, and so that means the demand risk is with the operator, and so there is a good I would say incentive for the operator to increase the billing, so that more revenue comes in and the operator gets his own payment. And it contract immediately achieved within probably 2-3 years. It achieved 100% metering, and they've increased the build volume by 70%, and substantially revenue collection was improved. Utility was very happy, the Delhi Jal Board, that they're getting substantially good revenues from the contract and from the system, which they were losing substantially earlier. And only issue is, still it doesn't give 24/7. They have tried in a small area, but it was limited to probably some 500,000 connections. Beyond that, they could not really deliver 24/7, even though the objective was to deliver 24/7 in the contract. And you can see how they have done simple meter replacement and also little bit of network improvement. While replacing the meter, they also improve, replace the connection pipes, the old connection service pipes, and from the pipe saddle onwards. So that really generated a huge revenue jump, and massive revenue came. It's almost 10 times more revenue the utility is collecting. So the utility is very happy with the revenue, and customers are also reasonably happy with the customer services and all. So there's no real pressure from the customer to deliver 24/7, because Delhi is a massive metropolis where it's not one customer property. Probably on an average, there'll be 10 properties per customer per meter. So that's the reason they always get water into their sump, and they still use their own roof tank. They don't feel the difference. So even though 24/7 is done, but the DJB, the Delhi Jal Board, feels this is a reasonably successful contract. And most recently, there is a contract prepared for a city of Kochi, which is in southern India in state of Kerala, and Kochi is predominantly a PVC pipe, and the state water utility Kerala Water Authority operates it, and their main problem was non-revenue water of almost 51%. Again, this is a 100% metered utility, so the NRW is fairly reasonably estimated. So from the 51%, they because of continuous increase in non-revenue water, they were struggling to sustain the supply to the customer. And earlier, about 15 years back, the city used to give 24/7, but off late it's only about 60% of the town gets 24/7, and balance 40% is intermittent. So they came up with this contract, and this is a design contract. Again, we were involved in this design, and it's a 10-year contract. And instead of a FIDIC gold book, which is not really customized for such operating contract, so we used a simple pink book, and we added the O&M scope into the contract, and it's a 7-year Asian Development Bank loan period. And for year one, we called it as project establishment, in which operator studies, does the surveys, and establishes all baselines, puts an instrumentation to the entire system for a good measuring. And then 6 years was given. This is a very a highly urbanized city, very difficult to work in, difficult to close the traffic for do any renewal work. So we spread the construction to 6 years. Again, learning from the lessons from other contracts, which took almost 200% time overrun. So 6 years of asset renewal program, and the contract starts with operations from the day one. The operator will take over total operations from the Kerala Water Authority. And the only thing is, Kerala Water Authority has a very wonderful system of meter reading, billing, and collection done by a voluntary women across the state. So that works fairly well, and there's not much of collusion happens. So that will be retained by the Kerala Water Authority. Only the operations part, including meter replacement and meter maintenance and entire networks maintenance and all, will be given, is proposed to be given to the operator. And a very detailed performance preventive maintenance program is fixed under the contract, and the operator has to deliver the preventive maintenance program. Again, in terms of fee, it's as 80% fixed and 20% linked to performance. And there is in each zone, there are about 9 zones in that city. Each zone is given a timeline, but by this time the renewal of assets should be complete, and the KPI should have been achieved. And then you tick that this zone is complete. Then that renewed zone will come into preventive maintenance, and then the operator has an incentive to sustain that achievement of KPI over the next balance period of the contract. That's not happening. That is still in bidding stage, and the bids have been received by the employer. They are under evaluation. It will be interesting to see how it turns out. And if I summarize the KPIs in most of these contracts, typically there are 2 sets of KPIs. One addresses the customer, other addresses the assets. The customer is typically, because it's only predominantly distribution operating contract, so the water quality at tap, primarily to maintain the residual chlorine, is the target given, a KPI given to the operator. And all customer services, definitely private sector does it much better than a public utility. So entire customer service, both receiving the inquiries, addressing them, resolving them, all complaints, either billing or no water and all that, will be addressed by the operator, and there are weightages for that customer service. And then the 24/7 is measured, actually surrogate measurement, by just looking at the pressure through a critical measurement point. Each DMA will have 3 critical measurement point, in which pressure loggers will be there, and they'll record the pressure all through the supply time. So as long as you have pressure in the system, which is because most of them also use the existing networks. So in India, the standard used to be 7 meter earlier. So we keep still 7 meter as the residual pressure at the tap. So maintain 24/7, and also good revenue collection efficiency is definitely incentivized by the to the operator. So these 4 are typical customer-based KPIs. On the assets, there is a huge asset renewal is taking place, and it should be done within the timelines and not much of variation. And when you turn off the zone, renew a zone, the non-revenue water typically is, as per Indian National Service Level Benchmark, it's about 20%. So it should be below 20% is once you renew the complete renewal of the zone, and deliver the preventive maintenance program, and also submit periodical performance reports. So these towards there will be a separate weightage for each of those KPI, which will be linked to performance and then checked. Typically, the performance fee is paid every once in quarter, 3 months, whereas the fixed fee is paid every month. So that's how the majority of the contracts are structured. So if I summarize, what's a good practices and lessons learned? So as I said, initially we started with an operating contract, led by an operator. But because market doesn't have operators in India for several hundreds of cities, so it moved into design build operating contracts, and the DBO contracts have been found that they are good for more or less a greenfield development. The typically Gold Book was designed for a greenfield asset. So, but here you have an existing asset, so which makes complicated. And also it's a growing cities. So every time you get into a contract, by the time contract ends, then there is a part of new city expanded which doesn't have networks. So that's a issue. But still, the DBO contracts are preferred by the market, and because again it's dominated by construction companies. And typically a construction company, if they take the contract, do the 3-4 year construction, then they will hire a subcontractor to carry over their own debt. So that's how predominantly the market responding. And each contract has a set of performance linked payments which market is accepting. And then there's a partial investment risk, as I said about concession and HAM model. There's a partial investment risk has been tried in the market with about 20 to 30%, but still they are very limited. It all depends on the city's financial strength and all. So I would say it's not really successful, very, very limited success. Market doesn't prefer, and government of India is putting $90 billion. So when you have such cash contracts, why should private sector put their own investment? So that's investment is really discouraged by private sector. So the DBO contracts had a mixed success. And then, as I said, there are several operating contracts which have been, I would say, reasonably better successful than the typical construction contracts. And they are suitable for there are existing assets and also networked assets across the city. And actually the O&M is the main weakness of the public utility. Public utility does the construction, they deliver huge construction projects in time, but O&M is very, very weak in the public utility. So it's good to involve private sector. And still there are no standard bidding document. Most of the documents were customized for each contract. But as I said about Kerala case, a works contract combined with O&M, with a separate O&M contract integrated, that will definitely get you a good success. And there has been, as I said, few cities with 24/7 successfully done. And definitely they are reducing losses in the system from a massive erratic rationing of once in a week water supply to definitely much higher supply hours, and also significant reduction in losses are seen. And water quality definitely improves as we improve the supply at the tap. That's about from me. Joe, you want to do these 3 slides, or
Yes,
we go break for a questions?
That's fine. Yeah, we'll in fact, we'll go for questions now. Actually, you can go back to your brief. We'll announce these at the very end.
Yeah.
You can go back to. No, thanks very much, Anand, for that. That's very interesting. So we'll invite questions now, and I see we've already had a few questions submitted. if anyone wants to ask a question, you can either type the question, or if you want to ask it in person, you just unmute yourself and we can get a discussion going. So to start it off, first question was from Ignacio Pena. So you see there, he was asking for the PBC in Karnataka, what were the threshold key performance indicators that triggered the performance payment? Anand.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And the performance payment was linked first to maintaining 24/7 supply for all connections, with few exclusions. If there is no water in the system at all, there's a massive drought happening, or there's a huge power shutdown happening, stopping the entire water works. So the production is not with the operator, it's only distribution. So first KPI is maintaining pressure, minimum pressure in the network all through the time. And we have given a percentile compliance that out of the 1 year compliance, or every quarterly it is measured. So in each quarter, there's a percentile compliance limit of maintaining pressure in the system, again monitored through the critical measurement point. That has a weightage of, if I remember, about 20% weightage. And the second is a customer service in terms of resolving the complaint. Again, there are 3 types of timelines. One is typically, if no water, immediately it should be resolved. And if it's a billing complaint, you could resolve it in like a 2 days, 3 days time. So there are different timelines for each type of customer complaint. So customer services had something about 15% weightage. And then we had a leakage target of 30 liter per connection per day in the network. So that was a leakage target, which the operator preferred to substantially replace the pipeline. They felt it's a quite stringent considering the condition of the existing asset, and they prefer to replace almost lock, stock, and barrel all the distribution pipes and connections and meters. So that, but while the capex scope increased because operator preferred to replace, but operator did very good innovation in both design as well as procurement. And finally, operator saved almost, if I remember right, about 20% of the capex from the threshold. So that's a thing. And so the leakage target was quite stringent. So these 3, and then also there is a water quality, at the tap, basically residual chlorine at the tap, were the 4 KPIs in that contract.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah. Sort of a related question from Bambos Haralambos. Yeah, he's asking specific questions about what was achieved on that Karnataka project, how much physical losses was achieved, what percentage of pipes was replaced. Do you have specific answers to those questions?
Yep, thanks, Bambos. And as I said in the earlier response, almost the entire distribution network was replaced in the contract because of stringent targets in the performance fee, and 40% was linked for performance. And the second question was, as I said, when the demo zone project started, the city was getting water once in 10 days. So nobody could even actually assess what is the non-revenue water or physical losses in the system. You hardly have no water in the pipes. So from that huge, very erratic, once 24/7 was done with the almost, as I said, replacement of entire distribution network. So in terms of percentage, it's about 95% replacement, and all connections, 100% connections were replaced and metered. And once they commissioned the project in all 3 cities, the average loss was about 6% when the first commissioning happened. So the operator could maintain it, that 6%. But that physical loss, again, if we carefully look into the leak repair activity, again, about 70% of those leaks were third-party damages. A municipal sewer contractor is doing some repair, or telecom guys are laying some ducts and all that. So majority of those leaks were actually third-party damages, not the typical network leakage due to operation. So they maintained that. But when we last studied this, probably about 5-6 years back, at that time, the water losses touched 11% in terms of percentage. And but the contract target was 30 liter. It was well within 30 liter per connection. So that's a leakage level. So there was a huge learning that if a good quality pipelines are laid, and also the biggest difference is most of India, they don't really test the networks when they lay the pipes, which is very crucial, but it doesn't not happen in the field. But in this contract, first time testing was properly done for each network pipe, so at the site. So that's how the entire hydro testing really ensured really leak tight networks. So the contract, even today, they perform reasonably well. I hope I have answered your questions.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much. And yeah, it's next question, and it's sort of related to question I want to ask myself. So Paul Fanner is asking the question: given the performance, given what that Karnataka, that PBC operating contract achieved, are the financing institutions promoting it in other cities? Maybe I'll just link it to a question of my own. The metric that jumped out at me in your presentation was again on that Karnataka project you mentioned. The intermittence, the supply was twice a week. It went from twice a week to 24/7 supply, with an 18% reduction in bulk supply. So it really seems that project achieved great results. And you've just described why there was very stringent KPIs as part of the reason. But I was also interested, you said that it hasn't been replicated. You said that the market reacted. So I'm just curious as to why. Maybe you want to elaborate on that. It seems like such a successful project. Why hasn't it been replicated in other places?
Yeah, it was the World Bank which implemented this demo zone project, and the bank also wrote many things, and everybody learned huge lessons. But unfortunately, as I said, there is no water industry in India. We do have large to medium construction companies in the country. So when this demo zone was tried out, it was a World Bank financed. It's a small contract, 25,000 connections, and the bank's finance really helped it to market it as an international bid. So we received 5 bids in that, and all 5 bids were international operators. And because there is no local operator who will qualify for such operations experience, so it was all in 5 international operator who bid. And the lowest was at the time it was Veolia Water who won the contract. And once the contract was successfully commissioned, and I know everybody had a great lesson to learn from this. But unfortunately, rest of the utilities say, we don't have anybody other than the 2 French operators in the country. So do we give whole India for the 2 French operators? That was the first question asked. And second question is both the operating companies, they themselves internally, okay, this is my impression, I'm telling, I could be wrong. My impression is that both the operating companies did a review internally, thought that what they are gaining through an operating contract is a fee, whereas if you handle construction also, you get massive profits in very short time, 3 to 4 years. So both the operating companies who are even today available in India, they turned themselves into also a construction company. They give a subcontract to a local construction company. So they also started, they I would say tasted the profit from short-term construction profit. So that's how the operators also turned into construction contractors here. So that's the biggest issue, where honestly today nobody would bid if we come up with a pure operations contract and without any work scope. And that's a one element. And second element was that in the same contract, in the demo zone contract, the operator chose, based on a good quality. Let's give me an example of meters. When they went for a meters bid, supply of meters bid, they went for an international bid, and it had its own scope and technical spec. But the few companies from very cheap meters, they also participated. In India, typically we choose lowest price. So it became a controversy that the operator wants the highest price bid, whereas there are all of the other bidders who have quoted lowest. So the government could not even approve that tender. It took almost 6 months controversy, but finally operator prevailed that it is my performance risk. So they bought the best quality meters, which really helped the contract. So these conflicts between the lowest pricing regime in Indian contracting framework and forcing the operator to buy the lowest cheap products. So that really operators also thought that it will be difficult unless we do the construction, we cannot ensure quality. through third-party people. So these two elements, and also again, just a monopoly of two operators in the country. Even today, honestly, we have just two other operators in the country. Those operators are large construction companies, and they will not be able to come for bidding for small towns and others. So that's where the contract could not be repeated, and the market transformed into DBO contracts. Let me stop here.
Thanks very much for that. Yeah. Next question from Alison Woodruff. Yeah, she's asking what, despite the success of those PBCs you've described, what are the biggest barriers to achieving 24/7 supply, do you think?
Yeah, the biggest barriers are, I would say that Indian networks, as I said, majority of the networks were never hydro tested when they laid, and prevailing intermittent water supply practices, further degenerated this entire asset. And in case of one of those cities in the demo zone project itself, after the success of this contract, the local public water utility replaced all networks in one city, and they thought they will also deliver 24/7, but it didn't happen. It worsened the entire supply regime, and so the asset condition of the existing networks, how they were laid and how they were jointed and hydro tested, and more than that, how the connections are given. The service connections regime in India is done by local plumbers, and the local plumbers use any of quality of pipe, and to use this, probably they buy the cheapest product from a hardware shop, and they will provide the connection with very bad jointing and all that. So the connections and the network integrity is quite, I would say, brittle. So nobody will be able to take a risk on the existing networks. And the second thing is typically a construction company would make I would say, highest profit in a contracting period of, let's say, 10 years. They will make their biggest profit during construction. The moment works are complete, the construction company will have very little interest, because the profit what they will gain during operating regime is hardly anything. So that's also discourages. These two are barriers. And I've shown you, other than the demo zone contract, no other contracts is truly delivering 24/7, because the works implemented by the same company, and then the construction company signs off after 3-4 years. Then whoever is operator, they'll just continue it. So the quality of workmanship, and I still, as I say, the operating skill of network management, and in terms of managing the hydraulics within the network, and again, biggest weakness in the Indian networks is there is no preventive maintenance. And the preventive maintenance is basically you need to do leak detection periodically, and also maintain your networks and do a good leak response time and a good quality leak repair. So the preventive maintenance is really lacking in the country, which is another barrier. See, the 24/7, I would say, is an offshoot of a good preventive maintenance regime. Let me stop here.
Okay, thank you again. And a sort of similar question is a similar question there. I won't attempt to pronounce your name, but is power an issue? Are there many power supply interruptions, and does that have a knock-on effect on intermittent supply in India?
Yes, that's a good point, that we still do not have a totally uninterrupted power regime in India, even though now we have surplus power in the country, but the power utilities also have issues with the quality of the power. But again, let me clarify that Indian utilities historically knew the lack of power supply. So I would say majority of over 80% of the utilities, they designed the system to make water available within 20 to 22 hours in a daily operation. So and then typically the power cuts may happen about 10 to 15 minutes, not every day, probably I would say once in a month. And that once in a month 10 minutes should not affect, because you have already designed with a factor of safety considering the power availability. But the issue is the storage systems and the networks, as long as they are leaking so badly, no amount of water, even if you have full power, there are few months where you will definitely, all post monsoon month, we do have power fully available, but still the utilities struggle to deliver 24/7. But power is an issue, definitely.
Okay. And another question, and specifically about customers, that are customers being prepared socially to change from from intermittent to continuous supply, because they might be very used to intermittent systems and sort of have their storage and their plumbing tailored to that. Is there much preparation on that side?
Yeah, this was one element we really learned the hard way in the demo zone project again. And initially, no customer believed it. Actually, that water will be available round the clock. And as I said, almost every customer in India has a ground level sump to which the intermittent water supply delivers. So everybody said you deliver into the same sump like earlier getting intermittent water, but we made it in the contract to deliver through a tap within the customer property, not to the sump directly. And the customer is free to take the water through a hose pipe or his own connection back into the sump. And there was a good communication made that you don't require this at all because you will be getting 24/7. But as I said, nobody believed it. So they still continued with their own systems. But 2 years down the line, people saw how much is the pressure they're getting, and they realized that they don't need to spend additional electricity to pump from the ground level sump to the roof tank. So people then slowly asked the utility, and in fact, they use their own plumber to connect directly to their plumbing, which goes into the roof tanks. Then the customer campaign also told them that why you store this water again, you are contaminating by bird droppings and all that on the roof. You can directly bypass it into your direct network. So people also trusted it in about 4 years time after the contract commission. I would say about more than 150 customers bypassed from their sump as well as from their roof tank directly connected to the plumbing. But an interesting phenomenon is not only the public networks leak so badly, but the internal plumbing is also done. There's a bit of a quality in the country because of our quality of materials and the plumbing practices exist. So many people had massive sweating on their walls. Every pipe inside was leaking because you are delivering water almost at 20-meter pressure. So they immediately got worried. So they stopped the bypass and they still continued with their roof tank. But they bypass the ground level sump and there's no further pumping required. So that was a very good communication effort. Initially, it was not realized, but during the contract commissioning after that, there was a good communication was made by both the operator as well as there's a dedicated communication team with the customer. So finally, that could be achieved. But if you ask me other cities, as I said, still there is no 24/7. So people still get water through their sumps, and they are not bypassing currently at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And I think, well, the final question for now, possibly, it's a good question to finish on. Do you think is 24/7 supply, is it actually achievable at city scale on a sustainable basis in India, do you think?
Yeah, this was a question all the time people were made after the demo zone success. Everybody said this is only a part of 10% of the city, not citywide. So recently, about 2 years back, there's a small city. It's about 250,000 people in a place called Puri in Orissa. And where I presented you the Kochi contract, preventive maintenance contract. There are two cities, one capital city called Thiruvananthapuram. In fact, they hired us to do the entire help to them, and we got a contract in which even Bambos was also slightly involved. So they are delivering 24/7 since now almost 2 years. It's a citywide, entire city is covered, but it's 250,000 people. And as I said, the other two cities in Kerala, which is the capital is Thiruvananthapuram, which is about almost 1 million people. And the utility delivers almost 95% of the city, they deliver 24/7. It is feasible.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think that's, I don't think, unless we have any other questions, I think that's been a very comprehensive presentation and question and answer session as well. So it's very, very interesting to hear about those projects in India. So I think if we have no more questions, we can just proceed to the next slide, just a few announcements at the end, and then we can close. If you just move to the next slide, Anand.
Yeah.
That's just to mention again, this is we have a special edition of this journal, of the Aqua journal from the IWA Publishing, to be published very soon. It has a number of papers on intermittent water supply, and it's our group chair, Razia, has been working hard on this. So that's coming very soon. So we just announced that. Yeah, next slide. And the next webinar in a month's time, our management committee member, Hassan, I can pronounce his name, he will be presenting on IWS and water security and cities on the last Wednesday in June. We've been doing these on the last Wednesday of every month this year so far. And if anybody else would like to present a webinar in future, please email either myself or our chair, Razia. And all these webinars are available on our YouTube page, as this one will be very shortly. So on that note, thank you very much, Anand, for that. And it was very informative, and good day, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Razia and Joe, and thanks everyone for your patient hearing. And you can contact me on IWA Network, and if you have any more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anand.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.